welcome to Legally Speaking with me, Tarun Nangia. This is our series on Justice Chandrachud, the Chief Justice of India, who will assume office on the 9th of November 2022. After a long time, we have a Chief Justice who will serve for a tenure of exactly about a little over 2 years. And this also gives him a lot of time to implement what all policies that he's thought for the court system, including the e-courts, which are closer to his heart. We've seen him encouraging the digital court system since the COVID pandemic. In fact, he's been one of the strong votaries of the benefits of digitalization of courts, and that also we'll discuss today. I have a very eminent panel who joins me today evening for this show. May I welcome Senior Advocate Mukul Rohatgi. As we all know, he served as the Attorney General of India and also is one of the leading arguing counsels before the Supreme Court of India for so many years now. He is, of course, a well-known name. We represent top corporates of India and multinationals from around the world before the Supreme Court of India. It's a pleasure to have him on the show. Good to see you, sir. Also, I have with me Mahesh Agarwal, Managing Partner of Agarwal Law Associates, one of India's leading law firms before this, doing a number of cases before the Supreme Court and the other courts and other forums. Good to see you, Mr. Agarwal, and looking forward to some interesting inputs from you. I have with me Ruby Singh Ahuja, Senior Partner with Karanjawala and Company, one of India's leading litigation law firms at the Supreme Court of India. Good to see you, ma'am, and looking forward to some interesting inputs from you too on the show. At the outset, may I request Senior Advocate Mukul Rohatgi that in the first 3 minutes or so, if he could, in a sense, lay the ground on what he foresees with Justice Chandrachud taking over as the Chief Justice of India for a period of 2 long years. Over to you, sir.
See, first of all, I wish to tell you that I have known Justice Chandrachud from the time that he was a lawyer, especially in the late 90s. When I was an ASG in the Supreme Court, he was the ASG in the local High Court, namely Bombay. So my association goes back more than 30 odd years, 25 odd years. So I would first like to tell you that behind a boyish face is a very mature mind and a very keen intellect. And I have seen it develop over the last so many years. He has the uncanny ability to do justice, not only, in a practical manner, but equally adept in tackling tough, thorny, and constitutional issues at the same time. His judgments show application of mind, hard labor. The judgments are delivered, chapter-wise like a book, starting with a foreword and ending with a conclusion. And that is what I see every day in the court. The judge is always prepared with 80 or 100 matters, etc., etc. I have never seen him kind of lose his temper. He has all the good qualities of being a judge, moderate, encouraging youngsters, etc. So that's what I have seen him doing. Now let's talk about what I expect him to do in the future. As you mentioned, he was the head of the E-Committee in the Supreme Court. He wants digitization all across the country. Everything should be on the click of a button. He himself in court is completely paperless. He has no file. He has only one Apple laptop. And the other judge with him, Justice Hima Kohli, is equally adept. And I must say that not any of us who are on the panel are as adept as the judge himself. What my wish list first thing would be so that the Zoom hearings start in the Supreme Court once again. So much infrastructure has been laid across the nation in various courts. Everybody had become adept and comfortable with it. It had a lot of advantages. You are not crowding in courts. There are not so many cars in court. There's less pollution, more environmental friendly. And once you have set up an infrastructure where people from across the nation can join the hearing, then why is it that just because the pandemic is about to be over that we've disbanded everything? Bombay High Court is completely disbanded. Gujarat is completely disbanded. What's the point of wasting all this, the hundreds of crores which have been spent? People have got used to it. So my first wish and I hope he can hear me, is that he must start encouraging Zoom hearings so that people don't have to physically be present in court, and taking this cue, various high courts who have disbanded it must come back with these Zoom hearings. That is the first thing which I wish that he should do. And the second, which according to me is most important, all the criminal appeals and bails in every court in the country must be taken up in priority to civil matters. Even though we do a lot of civil matters, we clog the courts by saying this is a huge matter of 500 crores or 5,000 crores. But priority must be given to criminal matters and to under trials. It's a shocking system that people spend 5 years or 10 years as under trial, and you serve the sentence. That is one thing he must speed up. He must direct every court to take it up and then go forward. These are my first initial thoughts.
Thank you for the initial remarks and the suggestions that you shared with the audience. I have with me Mr. Mahesh Agarwal, Managing Partner of Agarwal Law Associates. Mr. Agarwal, you are one of the leading law firms at the Supreme Court of India. So whatever decisions on the administrative side are taken by the Chief Justice of India in a way will impact you, be it on digital courts or other decisions, be it the listing issues or the scheduling issues, everything impacts you. Could you share with us your expectations of Justice Chandrachud as the Chief Justice of India?
Yeah, I would say that we call him an ideal judge or a born judge. I have also briefed him when he was in Bombay High Court. I was doing my law in Bombay and I used to go and brief counsels. He was a regular counsel in Bombay High Court and used to brief him. And the patience he showed at that time is what you can see now when he's conducting matters in the court. The good part is that he's encouraging rank juniors to argue the matters. He assists them, offers them the brief, encourages them to argue, which is a very big thing. And the fear of a young junior who comes to court, is overawed by the Supreme Court, goes away in a second the moment he appears before Justice Chandrachud. So that's a very big thing, encouraging a vast spectrum of lawyers to appear. Now that also is encouraged by the fact of this virtual hearing. Sometimes young lawyers, when they come to court, they're overawed by the court and they get afraid. Now, when you're doing a hearing on virtual mode, it encourages more and more people. As we have seen in the last 2 years, there are very good, competent lawyers from various states who are appearing in the Supreme Court virtually, and they're doing very well. And the judges are also encouraging them. So that gives an experience. A lawyer from Chennai or Kerala may never get a chance to appear in the Supreme Court, but he gets that chance. So access to justice is very, very critical. And we hope that this virtual hearing system is continued, at least in respect of a particular section of matters or in a few days, so that the court reaches a litigant's home or a lawyer's home from where he can access, whether it's Kerala or Kashmir or Calcutta, from anywhere a person can attend. So it basically encourages junior lawyers to appear. It reduces the costs of clients. It reduces the rancor, which is there always, that you should have multiple Supreme Courts all over the country. There is no need to have a multiple Supreme Courts all over the country, say in North India or South India, when anybody can access Supreme Court right from his home. So with these qualities which Justice Chandrachud has shown, we hope that access to justice will become much easier and digitization will move much faster.
Okay. Thanks for your opening comment. I'll go to Ma'am Ruby Ahuja. She's senior partner with Karanjawala and Company, one of India's leading litigation law firms at the Supreme Court, the NCLT, and other forums. And likewise, I said to Mr. Agarwal, any administrative decision also impacts you and how, working with the law firm, so many cases, so many seniors that you engage on a day-to-day basis. Could you give us some input, suggestions, and your expectations with Justice Chandrachud taking over as the Chief Justice of India on 9th of November 2022?
Thanks, Tarun. See, first of all, it's a very good thing that the learned CJI will now have a little longer tenure, which helps him to little bit experiment on the administration side sometimes, because, if you bring a new rule, regulation, or any practice direction, you get a lot of feedback from the bar and you can play around with it and cater to the, demands and desires of the bar, because bar also is a very equal stakeholder in this. Having said that, as Mr. Rodgi said, Justice Chandrachud is one judge who can do a case of a class 4 employee violation of his a fundamental right with equal ease, in which he will do a very highly complex commercial case. Having said that, I think my first request to this learned Chief Justice will be, there be rosters should have little longer period. There is a situation right now which is unfortunate in Supreme Court where the roster of judges keep on changing very frequently. And sometimes in large commercial cases, you brief senior counsel. So after 2 hearings, and if the judge says, I want to hear it tomorrow, they come to know they are not sitting in the same combination, and then matter gets adjourned for a longer period. So I don't think so there has to be any reason that the roster or the combination of judges has to change so frequently. That will be my first request. My second request will be that, it is very surprising that Supreme Court is the only court in the country, though it's an apex court, where you find it difficult to get a matter listed. If you go to any high court, you file the matter comes up within 2 days or 3 days. Here, either you have to mention or you have to make some, go plead before the registrar. Maybe the procedure is that there can be 3 mentioning courts around 3:30 or 3:45 who give 15 minutes. The judges may give 15 minutes to the lawyers if they want to mention, so that sometimes the matters are urgent. It's immaterial whether it is a commercial matter or a criminal case or somebody's bail or somebody's demolition of a house. Third thing, though, Mr. Rodgi said that the criminal cases should be given precedent, no doubt about that. But, I think India also needs this whole thing of having some judges who just should hear commercial matters, because a lot of money depends upon those. So if we can have just earmarked 2 courts, there was an experiment done in Supreme Court where 2 judges were only hearing tax matters. And I think results will show how much recovery the department could make. Same way, maybe there can be 2 benches who just hear commercial matters, because otherwise what happens that either commercial matter is clogging up the court for a criminal matter where some poor person is waiting for his bail or is languishing in jail, which is equally bad. Or sometimes, the whole importance of the commercial case, especially in IBC arena, any delay becomes very fatal. So maybe we can just, categorize some courts to do certain sort of matters subject-wise, which will help. Right now, there is a roster, but, those courts should only do those matters. And of course, I think there's a lot of demand to have hearing through virtually, which is fine, which I think
should be done. Thanks for that opening comment and a few suggestions and inputs that you gave. I'll go to Mr. Mukul Rohgi at this point. You are involved in matters that have implications of thousands of crores, and routinely so. Every time we meet a promoter, they always speak about the cost of interest when a dispute is stuck in the court, sometimes for months. Sometimes money is due that has to be released, that can't be released first in arbitration, then it goes to litigation. If you have to promote Make in India, a lot of times a political executive says that in courts cases get stuck. That's why companies are hesitant to invest in India. What do you think that Justice Chandrachud could do so that the court system could deliver on the big ticket commercial matters so that foreign investors have the confidence to put money in our country? If you could give a few suggestions for the...
See, Tarun, this is originally a subject on which the government and the legislation must look at. It's very difficult only for a court within a system to do that. Now, the government has tried several things. It has amended the Arbitration Act. The scope of interference has been reduced drastically. The nature of appeals have been reduced. Commercial Courts Act has been brought into force. You're supposed to have a commercial division like UK, which will deliver swift and fast justice. But unfortunately, if I may say so, nothing has really worked. Even with the limited interference scope in arbitration, it can take anything up to 8 to 10 years for a matter to ultimately finish up to the Supreme Court, and the same position is in the commercial court. If you ask me, my personal feeling is that we must revamp our procedural codes, civil and criminal, to a very great extent, so that the laws of procedure made over 100 years cannot cope up with the burden today Not only in the matter of complexity, but sheer numbers. The population of India 100 years ago was very different than what it is today, and in a complex commercial world where the world is one and there is seamless borders, you see, for arbitrations, for imports, exports, and stuff like that. So you need to revamp our codes, our procedural laws. We need to introspect on the nature and number of appeals. No country in the world has got 4, 5, or 6 appeals or interventions by different courts only because of ingenuity of lawyers. All that must be cut down. That is what is in the realm of the government. The ball is in their court. But coming back, having said that, coming back, I heard Ruby talk about issues in the Supreme Court of listing, mentioning, roster, and all that. That's fine. One could look at it. That's a smaller problem because it is limited to one court. But the Chief Justice is Chief Justice of India. He's not the Chief Justice only of the Supreme Court. So he has to, you have to pull up your socks from the first rung of the ladder. So you have to look at how actions are decided in the first court, second court, high court. I can only tell you in some criminal matters, I have personal experience. Bail petitions filed in some high courts where the dockets are so overburdened. Big states like Bihar and UP, if you file a bail petition and you don't push for mentioning repeatedly, it will not come up for hearing even for a month, 3 weeks to a month. He has to set down procedures, issue directions, ask the Chief Justices to cooperate in their own courts to see that you must, give prompt hearings, etc., etc. And then as far as what you said about investment climates, the Chief Justice can surely ask the high courts. Mind you, there is no power of superintendence over the high courts by the Supreme Court, as there is over the trial courts by the high court. But surely, the Chief Justice of India can take the Chief Justices of the High Court together, have a discussion with them, not as an inferior and superior, but as parts of the same system. And then draw up a plan that every court must, as Ruby said, designate 1 or 2 good judges. By good, I mean more efficient judges than some others to take up matters, especially which involve foreign hands, which involve foreign investments, foreign parties, foreign collaborations, so as to send a right signal that we are not a country which is completely choked and, call it a banana republic because nothing happens. So you could set some kind of examples on that, draw up cases, not pure commercial cases, maybe. The first priority can be cases that will involve foreign companies. Foreign climate has to be seen, about how India is operating. Same thing can be done in arbitrations, which are foreign interventions. That maybe you could have some kind of an informal look, because the court cannot legislate. Legislation is the part of the government, but your own attempts can be, to some extent, to try and see that we pull up our socks from the lowest rung.
Thanks for giving that suggestion, and I hope that would be taken up in due course by the Chief Justice of India. I go to Mr. Mahesh Agarwal from Agarwal Law Associates. Mr. Agarwal, in disputes as involving 7,000 crores, 10,000 crores of deliverables, when adjudication is required and time just goes on passing without a decision, do you think that sends a negative signal to the world at large that if money gets stuck in India, it's very difficult to retrieve it? One way or the other, you might dismiss the matter, but to keep it hanging is something that we suffer, and on a large scale. Secondly, do you think the cost of dispute resolution also balloons too much when these kind of things happen? If you could give some suggestions from your vantage point to the incoming Chief Justice of India on that issue.
See, what is happening is there's so many infrastructure companies who have arbitrations going on with government companies, government institutes, The arbitration takes many years. Finally, they get an award, and the award is then stuck in courts. What happens as a result is, apart from what foreigners feel, etc., these companies face a huge stress and are facing bankruptcy proceedings because they are not able to pay their bankers in return. So there can be a company who's going through arbitration, gets a decree, has an arbitral award, has to receive money, but is unable to pay the banks because the decree doesn't become final.
Yes.
And after that, another phenomena we are seeing is that after the award is confirmed by the Supreme Court, execution takes as many years. In fact, Justice M.R. Shah has recently passed an order getting a report from the Allahabad High Court, and it is shocking that over 6,000 cases are pending in execution stage.
6,000.
So now what happens is, it is not just a question of perception of investment, but actual survival of Indian business. The companies in infrastructure, power, airports are not able to survive because they are not able to collect monies after getting a decree in their favor. So it is very important that matters are decided expeditiously. Now, how that can happen? Like Mr. Rodgi said, of course, we should have procedural changes, etc. But the judges have to be strict in not granting adjournments. There have to be time period fixed for arguments. Nowadays, for Section 34 challenge to award, hearings go on for days together. When you have a detailed award before the court, the hearing should not last more than 2 hours. So there should be a time fixation for arguments. There should be time limits within a 34 has to be decided, 37 has to be decided, and then the award has to be executed. Now, that is something which is more of a practice also. It is for the judges themselves to control this delay in litigation. So because of this delay in litigation, we are facing bankruptcies, liquidations, and loss to bankers. It is very critical that some method has to be formed to expedite all these things.
Point well taken. And going to Ms. Tobi Habuja from Karanjawala and Company. Ma'am, 2 points here. A, to make the digital court system more efficient, you will require a couple of 1,000 crores. I think during Justice Lokur times, we had a budget of 1,690 crores or something. But to make it really workable, do you think funds are going to be required? And that is the negotiation that the Chief Justice would have to do with the executive to get access to funds, because it's not only for the Supreme Court, but with all the high courts and even the lower courts. Do you see that happening in the next 2 years when the intent of our Chief Justice is strong?
I think it will. I'm sure he's going to try because he strongly believes in it. As Mr. Rodgi said, that his court is completely paperless court in one of a big constitution matter. He has already passed a mandate that I will not allow people to come with books. So I think since he believes in it, I'm sure he will have some negotiation with the government. And it also helps, as somebody used this word, that the court has to be brought to people's home. Otherwise, Supreme Court has become expensive litigation. Let me tell you with some experience, that not only individual, even corporates don't want to litigate now because they find it very, burdensome on their litigation budget.
Ma'am, but at your law firm, you routinely handle matters with implications of thousands of crores at the High Court level, the NCLT, as well as in the Supreme Court.
Yes.
Tell me one thing, when the matter gets stuck, what kind of challenge it is for the law firm to explain to the client that why it's going to take so much of time? And do you think that is where Justice Chandrachud could ease things, where the time period of litigation should be reduced? How could it be reduced? If you have a suggestion or two on that front.
I'll tell you one very simple thing which we have to do is to go back. I remember when I started in Supreme Court, you could only file what you had filed in lower courts below because it was the last appeal court. Now I have seen that absolutely new case is being argued in Supreme Court, which has never been argued in court before. You keep on filing documents after documents. That's one way, you can actually stop delays because you allow parties to bring up a fresh case having lost in 2 courts. So Supreme Court, what is Supreme Court doing? Supreme Court is looking afresh into this, which it is not supposed to do. That's number one. And number two, and I think I said this earlier on your show also, Tarun, that this Vexatious Litigation Act must be brought into India. I have been seeing cases where after insolvency is over, company has been taken over by the new management. There are frivolous applications filed not only in Supreme Court, but all parts of the India. And, you are supposed to run from one corner to other to tell that court that, look, I have done this plan, I paid this money under the aegis of the Supreme Court order. So because what happens, you can file a simple, litigation is expensive when you have to contest. If you have to file a simple application, it's not so expensive. You file it and you block and you bring people into the dock. Unless and until we bring vexatious litigation, I'm telling you, the litigation burden on judiciary will be reduced. People will think before filing frivolous cases. That is one thing, especially in commercial world. I think government must look into it. I'm sure the Chief Justice can't do anything about it, but this is where the government must come forward.
Okay, thanks for sharing that input. I'll go to Mr. Rodgi. Mr. Rodgi, way back in 1999, I think that was the time when you took up the position of the Additional Solicitor General of India, and you appeared alongside Justice Chandrachud. You had, I think even you would have no idea that you would become the king of the bar and he would go on to become the Chief Justice of India. But you have been through all these years together, and now you see him as the Chief Justice of India. Could you share your feelings on this achievement by Justice Chandrachud? Because it is also a personal achievement for a man, as it was for you to become the Attorney General and the foremost person at the bar. A few words.
As far as Chandrachud is concerned, as I told you about some of his qualities, also the fact that he's extremely hardworking, that I have seen at close quarters, even as lawyers, even as judges, I have seen as a judge when he's deciding cases, extremely hardworking. Now, many things play a role, including destiny. Because we don't have a set system as to who is appointed when and who will become Chief Justice of India when. These are all a lot of imponderables. But then he became a judge at a relatively young age. And by dint of hard work, built up a formidable reputation that carried him to be a Chief Justice of a very big High Court, namely UP. And he was a kind of a natural pick for the Supreme Court. So, things also destiny-wise happen at the right time. When it happens at the right time and you come to the Supreme Court pretty early, then, you know that you will be a Chief Justice at some time. So, as I said, dint of hard work, some destiny, when you are appointed, when you are promoted, all those things happen. We have had cases in the past when some Chief Justices in the Supreme Court suddenly passed away. Others who were not to be Chief Justices, became Chief Justices because of... So there's so many things which happen. We didn't discuss that. But I'm happy that, he's going to have a tenure of 2 years. 2 years is a sufficiently long tenure, considering that current tenure is about a month and a half or 2 months, and we have tenure is less than a month, 3 months, 6 months, and all that. After a long time, we have a tenure of 2 years, and his father had a tenure of 7 years. But I must applaud him for the courage that he has shown in being a part of the bench which overruled his father's judgment, which was rather infamous, which is called ADM Jabalpur during the emergency, as you know. And it's kind of, history repeating itself, the son overruling what was the weakness of the father, etc., during those times. I'm also happy that he has, over the last few years, and I have appeared in some of those matters, relating to safeguarding of liberty. And in your field, I don't know in your field, but I would say on social media, whether it is TV or whether it is on social media, etc., he has shown an inclination for safeguarding liberty, where I've appeared for several editors of newspapers or TV channels, etc., etc. So that keeps the flag flying insofar as liberty is concerned. And I'm sure he will listen to the bar, because no court, no judge, no Chief Justice can carry out reforms in the judiciary without taking the bar into confidence. Because as you know, justice is dispensed by the judge, but the lawyers put up their respective views. So, it's like different cogs in a machine. It has to work together. So he will, I'm sure, listen to the bar. He's a considerate person. He has no ego. And if he takes along everybody, including his peers and other judges of the high courts, etc., maybe some kind of a beginning can be made, because it's a very intractable issue. So many judges have come, so many governments have come, so many chief justices have come. But by and large, after some spark somewhere or the other, we are back to the system which Ruby was mentioning in the Supreme Court, or which I mentioned in the High Court. So apart, I think he should also be able to carry the government with him. You see, unless you have the government, you have to have legislation, you have to have cooperation from the government, because government is the biggest litigant. Let's not forget that. So if the government is the biggest litigant, and they also kind of listen to some voice of reason, which he may be able to persuade them to look at, namely that every court case does not have to come to the Supreme Court. A class 4 employee's promotion is routinely brought up to the Supreme Court at the instance of the government, because what do they lose? They have got panels at every stage. The panels are poorly paid. Nobody wishes to take a decision that why we should challenge it. So the Babu will write, go on challenge it, and leave it to the shoulders of the court and say, oh, now the Supreme Court has finished it. But look at the ruination of the employee. 10 years he's stuck and he's going on fighting about some promotion, some pension, some retirement, something or the other. So the government also, has to pull up its socks. It's the biggest litigant, as I said. So it has to be a holistic effort for everybody. If something can be, it's a churning thing, you bring it out, do something may come out. And in the end, I would, kind of wish him well, and let's see what can be done.
Thanks for that,
Thank you.
that encouraging words, and also a few suggestions. Very quickly, in about 30 seconds, I would request Mr. Mahesh Agarwal and Mr. Ruby Singh Ahuja to give him his wishes before we close.
We wish him all the best. And in the last few years, when he has been in Supreme Court, he's already delivered a staggering 500 judgments. We hope the law to advance more under his guidance. And apart from giving judgments, I'm sure he'll be a good administrator to set right many things which have gone wrong in the past.
Okay.
So we wish him.
Ma'am Ruby Ahuja, your wishes to him.
Of course, I wish him all the best. I call him a judge who follows protocol with least formality. And I think that is what helps the juniors in his court. And I wish him all the best. And I look forward to working to be in his court.
Thanks for those comments. And I would like to appreciate and thank each one of you. Now we are joined by Senior Advocate Pinaki Mishra, who's also an eminent parliamentarian. In a sense, he balances both responsibilities of a lawmaker and as an advocate who practices before the Supreme Court of India. Good to see you, Mr. Mishra, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Nangia. Thank you very much for having me on your much applauded show.
And at the outset, I want to ask you that Justice Chandrachud is getting a tenure of 2 long years, which is after a long time that we are seeing any Chief Justice have this kind of a tenure. So I want to ask you, what are the expectations you have from him in this tenure? And what do you also feel that after a long time, we're seeing this time that a Chief Justice will have a clear 24 months, which is a rarity in these times?
Well, Tarun, let me just go back quickly to my college days, because Justice Chandrachud was my senior in both St. Stephen's College as well as law faculty. And, they were, of course, part of that glittering batch, which you are well aware of Justice Chandrachud, Justice Sanjay Kishan Kaul, Mr. Parag Tripathi, Justice Rishikesh Roy. So it's a very, very bright batch, which was senior to me both in St. Stephen's as well as in law. And I have, watched him very closely grow and grow and grow in stature. What he brings to the table are, in my opinion, humble as it is, 5 incredibly detailed and very, very important attributes. Number one, he brings to the table an absolutely sparkling intellect. I don't know, of another person, bar, somebody like Justice Rohinton Nariman, for instance, on the bench, I mean at the bar, of course, there are many sparkling intellects, but on the bench, people who have chosen to give up the bar and go into public service of this kind. His intellect is truly a superior intellect. I have seen him I didn't have the occasion to see him in Bombay High Court, but in Allahabad High Court, I've appeared before him several times, and now, of course, in the Supreme Court. And, it's a Bombay practice of delivering judgments and orders in court. But he has converted this into a fine art. It's really a pleasure to sit in court and to hear him impromptu, in an exceptionally complex question of law, dictate an almost flawless judgment, which I don't think requires one comma or full stop out of place later on. And that's a sparkling intellect and clarity of mind that he brings to the table. Number two, he also matches that with a very forward-looking attitude in life, both in terms of his social outlook, which is reflected in his judgments of, where he's decriminalized homosexuality, where he's decriminalized adultery, where he's allowed women into the Sabrimala temple, where the Putuswami right to privacy, which he has enshrined. So in that sense, he brings up incredibly forward-looking attitude socially, and also scientifically. He's also of great scientific temper. So therefore, his contribution to the e-courts and the entire e-system of judicial governance, and that's something again which we will see grow by leaps and bounds during his time. Number three, he's exceptionally hardworking. I mean, even by normal standards of hardworking judges, and I say this, most judges I feel are really hardworking. It's very, very, very brutally hard work to be a judge. But even by those standards, he's exceptionally hardworking. He's got incredible dollops of stamina, and we've all heard that he sleeps very little, but you will never see him yawn in court. I mean, I've never seen him. He's always alert. So he's got some incredible reserves of energy, which again is obviously almost cosmic in his case. Number four, he's also got a great sense of equity and balance. In the sense his heart is in the right place. Always bleeds for the underdog. He's always, in a sense, he will always try and give the litigant something within the four corners of the law. Always, never go outside the four corners of the law, but always give the litigant some succor, some little relief, some little, glimpse of happiness when they go away from his court. And, combined with that is his fifth attribute, which is his almost impeccable court demeanor. So even if you go away from his court, without getting a favorable order, his court manners are just so impeccable, and he's just so unfailingly courteous, and he's so unfailingly polite, to whether the lowliest, junior counsel or the senior most counsel in the courts. It's unfailingly courteous. So these are extraordinary attributes of a judge, and I think he brings those to the table. And therefore, I really genuinely believe that it will be a very good period. The 2 years perhaps is even too short a period for him to be Chief Justice. I believe that he will be an exceptional Chief Justice without doubt. Many challenges before him. I think the most important challenge will be the one of filling up appointments, because it's very difficult. As we've seen, the collegium system itself has become such a convoluted system now that we've seen Chief Justices who are not able to carry their court with them. Justice Deepak Misra, notoriously Justice Bobde, Chief Justice Bobde, these Chief Justices went away without any kind of contribution in terms of bringing more and more judges into the stream. While somebody like Chief Justice Ramanna, who without being really part of the integral judicial fraternity, as it were, has still managed to do such a wonderful administrative job of bringing in so many judges both to the High Courts and the Supreme Court. Because this is now such a balancing act, because this government is so aggressive in terms of its pushback vis-a-vis the judiciary, that the Chief Justice is left with a very daunting task of walking a very fine line, a very delicate line between handling his collegium at home and handling the government abroad. So it's a very difficult task, but I have no doubt that I think he has the flair and the flexibility to be able to handle all these with aplomb. Therefore, I expect a very good 2 years ahead for the bar and bench.
Since you wear two hats, one of a very eminent lawyer and a jurist at the Supreme Court of India, the second hat you wear is of an eminent parliamentarian and also a leader of a house of the BJD in parliament. So of a political leader also in that sense. I want to ask you this. Justice Chandrachud has got great, in a sense, ambitions for developing the e-court system in India. He made it very evident when he's spoken many times on many constitution bench matters, when we requested senior advocates that not even one piece of paper will come in the court when arguments are on. Everything would be on a tablet or something of that sort. What do you think will happen on access to justice via use of e-courts? Do you think that he will need the executive support to get access to funds? We had a 1,700 crore budget for e-courts, I think, during Justice Lokur's time. Do you think for this push we need a couple of thousand crores? And how will it help A, the litigant, B, the businessman or the commercial litigant, and C, even the council? Any thoughts from that front on the e-court system in India, keeping in mind that Justice Chandrachud is a strong votary of it?
So, Tarun, we have to thank Justice Chandrachud that under his tutelage and his sort of statesmanship, Orissa High Court has managed to comprehensively bring e-courts into all 30 district courts in the state. Chief Justice Muralidhar, of course, is the Chief Justice there, who's worked marvelously in sync with the Justice Chandrachud, who's heading the e-courts here in Delhi. So therefore, both of them have come together to bring about this revolution in Orissa. Now, this can, and then of course, they've got the support of the state government, because here a lot of this will depend on the nature of the state government support that you receive. Yes, central government support in terms of funding, in terms of budgetary approvals, etc., is important, but no less important is the contribution of the state governments in pushing for e-courts. So again, as I said, because he's so hardworking, I have no doubt that he's going to be traveling. He travels incessantly. I mean, every weekend I don't think he's spent a single afternoon resting at his home in Delhi on a weekend. Every weekend he's out. So I have no doubt that he's going to travel extensively in India. You have to, as Chief Justice, he will be, have the occasion to go to various high courts, interact with the various chief ministers there, with the various chief justices there, and there is, in a sense, when you're talking in a economy, Tarun, which we are looking to build into a $5 trillion economy over the next 3 years. That's the Prime Minister's dream. A couple of thousand crores, 4,000 or 5,000 crores is really nothing. It's a piffling amount. And as you said, and as everybody acknowledges and recognizes, it is going to have incredible amount of benefit, not just for the bar, not just for the manner in which the bench distributes justice, but for the clients, for the litigants, for everybody. And environmentally and ecologically, the amount of paper we absolutely waste, and that's the only way to describe it. These tens of thousands of pages running into 30, 40 volumes that these final hearings consume. We are just destroying our ecosystem with this sort of thing. So therefore, Justice Chandrachud's push in the Green Court, where he has said that my Green Court is going to be a completely paperless court, is well received, I believe, is absolutely something that was long overdue, and trust him to have come up with the idea and to push this so aggressively that I have no doubt again that this will grow by leaps and bounds during his tenure, and we all have to contribute to it. It's a gauntlet that he's thrown to the bar at large, that the bar has to really rise to this challenge, and I have no doubt that the Indian bar has both the acumen as well as the temperament as well as the wherewithal to be able to come to grips with what he has, the gauntlet he's thrown.
I want to ask you one more thing, especially on the appointment of judges. These are 2-year tenure. We'll see almost more than 8-9 vacancies that will, more than that during his tenure.
Oh,
So
about 15-16 vacancies.
15-16
16, half the court will go. Half this
Yeah.
court will go.
So, do you think a certain kind of communication with the executive would ensure that we will see these 15 appointments and court operating at full strength? Because the pendency actually went up during COVID. And just speaking of the Supreme Court, also the pendency has gone up. Do you think that is one thing that he'll have to navigate as Chief Justice?
Tarun, not just, please understand, it's not just the Supreme Court. The travails of the High Court is, the various High Courts in India is extraordinary. These High Courts are all operating at less than 50%, occupancy. I mean, so we are in a very bad shape as far as the High Courts are concerned. All of us just keep concentrating on the Supreme Court and wanting judges to be appointed there. Of course, it's very important. But the High Courts is even more important because that's really the first recourse as far as justice is concerned for the litigant. And again, High Courts are struggling. I see judges in almost every High Court with more than 100, 120 cases per day, which is physically impossible for them to handle. So they are under a crushing burden. So you need this, 100% vacancies to be filled up in the High Court. So this is going to be his biggest task. Supreme Court, of course, the vacancies, as they come, they will get filled up again because, I hope that the collegium, as I said, he has to handle the collegium at home and he has to handle the government abroad. So he has to do both. But what I'm more concerned about, and I'm sure so is Justice Chandrachud, and he's mindful of this because he's been in Allahabad High Court, for instance, where, out of 180 odd strength, it's operating, even when he was there, it was operating at 70, 75, or virtually 1/3, So therefore, he's seen what a crushing burden. I mean, I used to see his board in the Allahabad High Court as Chief Justice. It was absolutely crushing board. So he knows about the travails of the High Courts. He knows how important it is that those vacancies should be filled up. So yeah, we have great expectations from him. We hope and expect that the government will give him the support. That is, politics will be always at play. There's no doubt about that. But we hope that politics is kept to a minimum. And here I must say, Mr. Kiran Rijiju, in that sense, has been quite a revelation as a law minister, in a sense of, the Prime Minister's gamble of bringing in a non-active lawyer as law minister, I think has worked, because many of the prejudices and many of the biases that a practicing lawyer brings to his job as law minister are missing in his case. And that's a positive thing because he's, I think, able to look at many things objectively. He's still, of course, bound in a sense by many of the codes that the ruling party has put in place for him. And therefore, he's not able to break free entirely. But hats off to him that he has managed to push through many more appointments than his predecessors had done. So therefore, credit to him. And I think he and Justice Chandrachud will probably both be on the same page, I have no doubt, because both are forward-looking, both have, they look much younger than their age and they think much younger, I think, than their age. So therefore, both, I think, will do a good job in partnership together.
That's a compliment that we must also give to you, Mr. Mishra. You also look much younger than your age, much like both of them, but that's a debate for another day. Your last comments on Justice Chandrachud, wishing him well for his tenure.
I really wish him all the very best. He deserves all the very best. He deserves the cooperation of everybody all around to ensure that he has a great tenure. He's got such great inner strength and courage. Only somebody with great inner strength and courage can frown upon, his father's judgment, for instance, in the habeas corpus matter. It requires an incredible amount of inner self-confidence, inner strength to be able to do that. And he's done that, with great grace. So he brings to the table a great deal of grace, a great deal of, genteel old world manners and old world charm. And again, like I said, absolutely sublime intellect. So therefore, there is no doubt that he will have a great tenure, and all of us, it's incumbent upon all of us to ensure that we all cooperate to see this as a great revival of the Indian judicial system, which over the past 5-7 years has seen a bit of a dent. Let's face it. I mean, there's no doubt about the fact that it's seen a little bit of a dent. In fact, sometimes I genuinely feel it's been a bit of a serious dent. But I think with judges like Justice Chandrachud now taking over, I think things are going to look up for sure.
Thanks so much, Mr. Pinaki Mishra, for finding time for this special show on Justice Chandrachud and sharing your views with the viewers. Appreciate your joining us. Thank you so very much.
It's been an absolute pleasure and my privilege. Thank you very much too.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.